Hi guys, welcome back to Schauer Thoughts. My name is Sarah Schauer. This is a podcast for left and right brainers, middle brainers, anyone with a sense of smell, sight, anyone who can hear something, feel something, want to feel something. Welcome. This is the podcast for you. So today what we're going to be talking about is a two-parter, New Year's resolutions. How can we pursue them and actually follow through? And we're going to be using neuroscience, behavioral psychology, parenting techniques, and, the like. And I'm going to talk about my New Year's resolutions. I am a millennial, and I'm reading an article right now from the New York Times that millennials are the generation most likely to pursue New Year's resolutions. So I am a statistic. But it's because millennials were like, we can do something, but actually that's not exclusive to millennials. It's just, we have a residual childlike sense of wonder left in some of us. And, you got to capitalize on it during these dark and trying times. But what are my New Year's resolutions coming up? I'm going to learn ASL. I'm not going to say that I'm going to be fluent. However, I'm going to learn it. I want to get back into stand-up. I took a brief break from stand-up to to pursue studying and researching. And I'm realizing, okay, now I've gotten into the flow of things. I understand how I read, when I read, what I want to read. I have my whole methods, and I can incorporate another aspect back into it. And then I'd like to start making YouTube videos again. But the thing is I don't know what I'm going to do with my YouTube at this point. I could do video essays, and I love doing video essays, but then it's also like I basically do video essays here. So I'm mainly just going to dink, I guess, be whimsical and fun and light on my YouTube, obviously incorporating more serious elements because, God forbid, someone who's... The thing is anytime you get whimsical and you're over the age of 30, actually, if you're a woman and you're over the age of 15 and you get whimsical, they're like, when are you going to straighten up? When are you going to get serious? When are you going to take your life seriously? It's like, shut up. I'm gay. I'm sober. I have the most unconventional job ever. Whimsical is kind of like necessary for the job, or else you're not going to survive. How do I know that? I've been doing this for 12 years. You need to hold on to some whimsy, or else it's going to get really dark really quickly. And so I guess I'm going to do more Lego videos. If you guys don't know, I love Legos, and I love making Legos and discussing making Legos. I love making Lego sets and discussing deeply philosophical stuff. I guess I don't really get philosophical here. It's mainly the sciences. It's because with philosophy, it's hard because people want to debate you, and you're like, but that's the fun part. I know, but sometimes you just read the opinions and you're like, oh, Jesus Christ, whatever. But so I will have to figure out the YouTube stuff, and I may be going back to school. However, the school thing is going to be purely for a title. So background on me, I was in school 10 years ago. I had a double major in marketing and business analytics. I did not show up to any of my finals because I had a complete and utter mental breakdown. However, grades were submitted after finals, so I got to walk. So it looks like I graduated, so I have the pictures. That's fun. However, I did not actually graduate. The 4 classes that I still have to take are 4 400-level stat classes. Now, the thing is I love math and stats because I am weird. No, I'm kidding. I'm autistic. No, anyone can like math. You should like math. But it's the Excel part that I have to relearn. And learning Excel is not that hard. But when you're just I'm just putting off learning Excel. And then so I'd go back to school, do those 400 level classes. And then I need to get 2, I think, certifications to become an auditor. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to transition job titles or jobs to auditor. I'm saying I'm probably going to go this CPA route, but there's something. Well, actually, there's auditors are scary motherfuckers, and I am just kind of sick of talking about my job at this point because mainly, I love talking about my job with people who are genuinely curious, but most of the time when you're in your 30s and someone asks you about your job, they're trying to gauge how much they want to respect you. They're like, and so if you say content creator, right? Or comedian, respect out the window, right? And the thing is I'm fine with, I don't care, but it's like I want people to talk to me like I'm a human being, and those two things are a human being off the table, and being a woman way off the table. And it's like, well, then Sarah, don't socialize with those people. You don't understand. It's every person. And auditor is just a great title that shuts down conversation. It makes people move along to the next thing because it's like, oh, I'm an auditor. Cool. Got any kids? And then I'll tell them that I'm infertile. I'm not, I haven't tested it, but like, I just, I want to shut down those conversations where it's like, it's too awkward to continue. And you're like, oh, Sarah, you could lie about being an auditor. Well, no, I don't want to, especially if it's just like me finishing 4 classes on like math classes and getting certified. So I may be going back to school. I've thought about it. I've definitely looked into it. 1 class at a time, 1 step at a time. La da 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 da. Anyway, so those are my New Year's resolutions, and I'm gonna be giving advice on how to pursue New Year's resolutions. Now you're like, what are your credentials? Well, my big ones are get sober, got sober. Almost 3 years sober. By the time the second part of this comes out, I will be 3 years sober. That was a New Year's resolution, followed through. Second one was get into stand-up, and I did get into stand-up, and I went to the New York Comedy Festival. I was dedicated to stand-up, so got into stand-up. Third one was get into reading, and clearly I love reading now. So all 3 of those were New Year's resolutions. And I did them, and I followed through. I did take a break from stand-up so I could get an understanding of my reading style. But now that I'm realizing you can be whatever the hell you want to be, I'm like, oh yeah, I can be funny and smart. Will people respect me? No, but that's because of sexism and ableism. That has nothing to do with me personally. Like, people already don't think women are smart or funny. So like, oh, and now it's whatever. So it's like it's like when I was trying to figure out if I should come out as a lesbian to my parents, I was like, hold up a second. They only respect me because they think that there's a possibility I could marry a man. However, they've never respected me. What's one more thing? I was just like, oh, I should just be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to come out, because it's like, if they're already committed to disrespecting you, it's really no cosmetic or sort of, it's whatever. But yeah, so those are going to be my New Year's resolutions, and then we're going to talk about how you can follow through with yours. And I've recommended this book a million times, but What We Value, the Neuroscience of Choice and Change by Emily Falk, I would absolutely recommend getting into, because it talks about change and decision making. And I will link some free and affordable book options, like audiobook options as well, because audiobooks are so valid. Okay. And it's just like, it's accommodate yourself. Accommodation is not a privilege. It's a right. You have a right to accommodate yourself. Oh, but is it actually, is it fair if it counts? Shut up. Are you the school system? What do you mean, is it fair? If they absorb the material, then I don't care. Also, I don't care. I'm not in a competition with every person who listens to audiobooks. You know what I mean? Just accommodate yourself. I'm trying to think about before we get into that though, what has happened this week? I got not nominated. I got, this company reached out to me, this like big old company, a word company reached out to me, and they're like, we love your work. You should nominate your podcast for an award. And I was like, oh, that's great. And then there's like an application fees. And I was like, well, I can't swing these application fees right now. And they were like, okay, yeah, then submit your work for a scholarship. And then I did that 2 months ago. And then this week they were like, you got the scholarship. So I submitted this podcast for like a award. I'm not saying I would get it, but just the opportunity. And why I emphasize that is because I've never gotten a scholarship before. Never in my life. They were like, you got a scholarship. That email I have never read that directed to me with my own eyes. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I'm mainly bragging about the scholarship aspect. Win or not win, I've already won. Because this is what happens when you apply yourself. And now if someone would have told me that when I was younger, I think I would have done a lot more stuff in school. But, you live and you learn. And that's what it's all about. So what else am I doing? Christmas is coming up. I'm spending Christmas with my Butch Bae. And Butch Bae has put so many Christmas presents under the tree, as have I now too. And I touched on every single one of her hobbies. I mean, like every single, like I went through every note I've ever taken, every picture I've ever seen of her. And I like wrote down things that I know that she would like or that she's been needing or stuff that she's told me explicitly that she likes because, you know, we're both two children of people, of parents who didn't ever try. So I'm excited for us to like genuinely have a nice Christmas together. It's going to be so fun. Everything is pink, which I love. And she loves as well because she likes when I'm happy. Yeah. And we're going to get, what else? New Year's Day, I'm not sure if we'll do anything. It really depends on if there's an event. If there's a fun, sober, gay event, I know that's a tall order. I don't care. Oh, Sarah, just don't drink. You can't just go to a New Year's event and not drink. Oh, well, you can. But the thing is everyone, especially at a gay event, they're going to be like, why are you drinking? Why are you drinking? And you're like, oh, no. The gay community is respectful like that. I disagree. That's actually where we should get a little bit more woke. But we'll find out. We'll find something to do. But what else is going on in my life? You know what? I don't know. So we're going to get into, you know, the history, just a brief history of New Year's resolutions. This is by the history.com, the History Channel. I haven't actually touched on much history here. I mean, I did when I was super into sociology, but we've been more up to date. So this is just a brief rundown of where New Year's resolutions come from. If you'd like something to discuss with your uncle or someone who really likes history, there's a certain type of person who really likes history. Okay. So, you know, the history of New Year's resolutions. The custom of making New Year's resolutions has been around for thousands of years, but it hasn't always looked the way it does today. The ancient Babylonians are said to have been the first people to make New Year's resolutions some 4,000 years ago. They were also the first to hold recorded celebrations in honor of the new year, though for them, the year began not in January, but in mid-March, when the crops were planted. I don't know why that's funny. It's just, I acknowledge time like that. And I think that's so badass. During a massive 12-day religious festival known as Akitu, the Babylonians crowned a new king or reaffirmed their loyalty to their reigning king. They also made promises to the gods to pay their debts and return any objects they had borrowed. Oh, wouldn't that be nice in today's society? We're going to return some objects that we borrowed. Looking at you, every museum ever. These promises could be considered the forerunners of our New Year's resolutions. If the Babylonians kept to their word, their pagan gods, why is that? It's like their pagan gods would bestow favor on them for the coming year. If not, they would fall out of the gods' favor, a place no one wanted to be. A similar practice occurred in ancient Rome after the reform-minded Emperor Julius Caesar tinkered with the calendar and established January 1st as the beginning of the new year circa 46 BC. I like that. And you could just change the calendar. Sure. Named for Janus, the two-faced god whose spirit inhabited doorways and arches. January had special significance for the Romans, believing that Janus symbolically looked backwards into the previous year and ahead into the future. The Romans offered sacrifices to the deity and made promises of good conduct for the coming year. For early Christians, the first day of the new year became the traditional occasion for thinking about one's past mistakes and resolving to do and be better in the future. I like that for early Christians, we really, I'm not saying you only reflect on the first day of the new year. Every other day, all bets are off. In 1740, the English clergyman John Wesley, founder of Methodism, created the Covenant Renewal Service, most commonly held on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, also known as watch night services. They included readings from Scripture and hymn singing and served as a spiritual alternative to the raucous, R-A-U-C-O-U-S. I'll find out how that's pronounced later in the comments. Celebrations normally held to celebrate the coming of the new year. Now popular within evangelical Protestant churches, especially African American denominations and congregations, watch night services held on New Year's Eve are often spent praying and making resolutions for the coming year. I will not be praying. Oh, there is only one more paragraph. I was like, we got to really cut this short because if this is just a whole bunch of religious... Okay, yeah. Despite the tradition's religious roots, New Year's resolutions today are a mostly secular practice. Instead of making promises to the gods, most people make resolutions only to themselves and focus purely on self-improvement, which may explain why such resolutions seem so hard to follow through on. Because you need God. Well, actually, you know what? It does help to have a structured system because most beliefs are created in a group and they're also reinforced in a group. So if you're making New Year's resolutions in a group, that is the part that is probably most helpful. It's not necessarily the presence of a god. I guess threatening, avoiding punishment is a huge part of development and moral development. So yeah, that is helpful. But I wouldn't say that it's, you know what? Whatever you believe. It's helpful to do stuff with a group, though, I'm saying. According to recent research, while as many as 45% of Americans say they usually make New Year's resolutions, only 8% are successful in achieving their goals. But that dismissal record probably won't stop people from making resolutions anytime soon. After all, we've had about 4,000 years of practice. Yeah, I wouldn't, just because there's a high failure rate doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. I mean, the thing is you do something once, and I mean, just here's the thing. Try 1 year where you're serious about a resolution, and then the thing is the pressure is off. Like, I mean, just choose 1 year where you're like, all right, I'm going to stick to a resolution, and then you've done a resolution. And some of you have accidentally done a resolution. I know that I've accidentally quit smoking sometimes, but that's only when I run out of Vyvanse. So I'm like, sometimes I do follow. That's not a resolution. I have quit smoking for a couple years, though. But again, I ran out of Vyvanse, and there's something about Vyvanse and nicotine addiction. I'm going to research that later. So this is by the New York Post, and we're just going to talk about, saving money, exercising more, getting healthier are America's top New Year's resolutions heading into 2026. According to a new survey, the poll of 2,000 Americans revealed that only a small group, 10%, felt very good about 2025 as a whole. 10%, so 200 people feel good about 2025, labeling it a great year. Where do you live? There's 200 Americans out there that thought 2025 was a great year. I'm sorry. You're not well. And most felt less positive about it, saying it was just okay, 39%. 19% said it was bad, and 10% said it was awful. Come on, guys. We can get those numbers up. Awful. It was dog shit. So to turn things around in the coming year, many, 38%, are setting personal goals or resolutions, while with millennials being the most likely to create New Year's intentions, 57%, and baby boomers being the least likely, 23%. Oh, the people who most resist change? That sounds like them. Men are also more likely than women to set goals for 2026, 44% versus 35%, and they also feel more motivated to complete them, 93% versus 85%. Well, maybe it's because a lot of women don't need a massive overhaul of their personal constitution. I don't know. Maybe that could factor in, but I'd have to do some independent research. Conducted by Talker Research on behalf of Talkspace, the study found that people are creating 6 resolutions on average for the new year, with the most common ones being putting more money into savings, 45%, getting more exercise, 45%, and improving overall physical health, 41%. Along with those, respondents say they want to eat healthier, 40%, improve their holistic financial wellness, 34%, spend more time outdoors, 29%, and boost their mental health, 29%. And I think those are some great New Year's resolutions. And it's great to be like, oh, I'm going to eat healthier, as opposed to like stick to a really strict diet and then, beat myself up if I fail, It all said that not having enough money is their biggest barrier in general to accomplishing their goals, while baby boomers cited not having enough willpower. Oh, the baby boomers have enough money. You mean the selfish generation? You mean the generation that's hoarding the wealth? Oh, they don't have to worry about having, that's so them. But not having enough willpower. Yeah, no willpower to change. Yes, that is par for the course. Sorry, I'm so frustrated because my parents are both baby boomers. Also, I was doing some separate independent research about different types of parenting that came out of the 50s and 60s. My mom was born in the 50s, dad was born in the 60s. And permissive parenting, well, there was authoritarian parenting and then permissive parenting. And authoritarian, yeah, permissive. Yeah, it's like a weird blend of unloving distance. Just refusing to connect with family members by any means necessary. Sarah, you sound bitter. I am, because this is the thing. I realized this a while ago. Oh, Siri just activated because it thought I was talking to it. On top of everything, oh, Sarah's going to trauma dump. There was the financial abuse aspect. So the thing is growing up, my parents always told us that we were poor, and that we didn't have any money. Anytime we asked for something, they were like, "Oh, we can't afford that. Oh, like we can't afford that." And being isolated, I couldn't verify, and also I didn't have access to like Google for a while. I couldn't verify that my parents were low income, and I lacked some common sense. My mom was an '06 in the Navy and a doctor. She had been deployed 5 times, and when you get deployed, you get hazard pay. She's also a doctor. She's also an officer. And so she's making a decent amount of money. And then on top of that, actually, I'm not going to go to my dad yet. The Navy gives you a housing stipend. So their rent, part of their rent was covered. Both of my parents were in the military, and both the military paid for both of their colleges. So no college, half rent, right? And then my dad is a software engineer, right? And I my parents bought every house that they owned, and then they rented it out. I checked, the listings, and they were renting out their house. So 5 income properties being rented out, and the house that they lived in, they got a discount on their rent, and their college has already been paid for. Besides middle school for us, which we did go to a private school, everything was like public school. And I was like, oh my God, you motherfuckers are loaded. But they always like told us that they weren't. And so the thing is I now have unnecessary like financial trauma, right? It feels like I understand they may have had a scarcity mindset growing up. Yes. But they scared the ever living shit out of us when it came to finances. I also, oh my God, I can't. So anywho, baby boomers hoarding the wealth. And the thing is I know that they're probably like saving up, and someone's like, oh, but you might be in their will. Oh no. When they pass, I know that they're going to pull one of these. They're going to donate all the money they have to some podunk church in the middle of bumfuck nowhere that's homophobic as hell and needs a new parking lot. That is where my parents' money is going in their will. And also the thing is I don't want their money. So I just know it. There is absolutely no, and I, so, and the thing is everyone on my mother's side I can't get into it. Anywho, sorry, that was a whole long rant. But the whole thing was baby boomers don't want to change, lack of willpower, not afraid financially, par for the course. Some church is going to get a parking structure soon. I'm wishing them all the best. And the thing is you know what? Sorry, both their daughters are lesbians, so it's something personal. So these are the top resolutions for 2026. There's 6 goals, 6 or 7 main top goals. 45% saving money. Yes, exercising more, 45%. 41% improving physical health, 40% eating healthier, 34% improving holistic financial wellness, 29% spending more time outdoors, and then 29% boosting mental health. That all sounds good and great. I am going to, and then just wrapping it up, only a few, 10% felt good about 2020. Okay, I can't read that again, as people are living in just, I don't know, I don't know how 10% of people surveyed feel good about this year. I don't even, I would have, if I was conducting the survey, I'd have been like, do you know what good means? What scale are you using? Where are you from? Have you been indoors? Do you have access to technology? Where are you new here? Anywho, those will be linked if you'd like to read more about what everyone's making New Year's resolutions about. If you're super curious, or if you just love surveys, I get that. So we're going to be talking about the neuroscience of goals and behavior change. Now, this is going to be a little bit of an abridged. We're just going to touch on the abstract, and I did take out some different points and conclusions. So basically, the abstract for this research from the National Institute of Health The ways that people set, pursue, and eventually succeed or fail in accomplishing their goals are central issues for consulting psychology. Goals and behavior change have long been the subject of empirical investigation in psychology and have been adopted with enthusiasm by the cognitive and social neurosciences in the last few decades. Though relatively new, neuroscientific discoveries have substantially furthered the scientific understanding of goals and behavior change. This article reviews the emerging brain science on goals and behavior change with particular emphasis on its relevance to consulting psychology. I begin with, when you're trying to get the word count in? Yeah, so behavior change and cognitive psychology and neuroscience, and we're talking about behavior change in the context of cognitive psychology. Anyway, I begin by articulating a framework that parses behavior change into two dimensions. One, motivational, the will, and the other, cognitive, the way. A notable feature of complex behaviors is that they typically require both. Accordingly, I review neuroscience studies on cognitive factors such as executive function and motivational factors such as reward, learning, and self-relevance that contribute to goal attainment. Each section concludes with a summary of the practical lessons learned from neuroscience that are relevant to consulting psychology. I will say, Elliot, I like that you said I. That's just a personal thing, because the thing is we're going to talk about, again, first person possessive, because we want to identify with our goals, make them immediately relevant to ourselves, apply it to ourselves. We do not want distance between our goals. We want to lessen the distance, because the thing is you can do perceptual physics, and if you try to create more distance between you and your goals, you're going to be like, oh, it's going to take farther to get there. No, you got to draw it in. So there's two dimensions that they're talking about. One is motivational, the will, and the other cognitive, the way, right? So we're talking about, the thing is motivation, it's all going to go up in the brain, but the will is going to mainly be talking about like willpower. And if you hear power, right, it's most likely going to come from the body. Now, does that say that your brain is not powerful? No, it is. It is very powerful. However, what's supplying shit to the brain is mainly your body. And then your brain is like, well, here's how we're going to be doing this. So you need both. You need a will and a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. We're going to talk about goals and the 4 types of behavior. So what do I mean by goals? Colloquially, a goal is any desired outcome that wouldn't otherwise happen without some kind of intervention. In other words, a goal is a detour from the path of least resistance. So what we're talking about here is that a goal, a lot of people want New Year's resolutions to be easy. And the thing is I understand you want things to be easy. Why do things have to be hard? Things shouldn't have to be easy, or things should be easier. Shouldn't, right? You're talking about an imagined scenario. I need us to root ourselves firmly in reality. If we want to have a deep philosophical conversation about how life should be easy, we can. However, we're talking about our current situation. We're trying to play it as it lies. The cards we've been dealt, yes. Because the thing is a lot of people, when they discourage New Year's resolutions, they're like, oh, it just won't work. You're going to give up. And like the thing is being a contrarian is not subversive. It is not emotionally intelligent. It is not, you are abiding by the status quo, right? You're telling people that they cannot change, that they should invest no effort into change unless it's easy or, there's perfect conditions. You have bought the propaganda and now you are drop shipping it for free for no personal gain for yourself, right? So we're trying to pursue our New Year's resolutions with our current capabilities and trying to be realistic about it. If you're like, no, I'm just not going to do it. I don't want to even try to change. Okay. All right. Okay, Uncle Sam. But anyway, so formally, a goal is a desired future state, an end, coupled with a set of antecedent acts that promote the attainment of that end state. I present the informal definition first because it fucking matters for more, honestly. But I present the informal definition first because it captures something that is missing from the formal one, a sense of what people actually mean by the word goals and how we use them. So that's Yeah, that's something that I really want with research. The difference between like informal and formal is like you're missing a sense of what people actually mean, of like what is actually trying, like people are attempting to measure, and then how they use them in everyday situations, right? The value relative to them. That's what's missing. So technically, according to the formal definition, going out with friends to celebrate someone's birthday is goal. It is an imagined end state, and one can deploy various means to make it happen, but most people wouldn't think of planning to go to a party later tonight as a goal. In practice, we set goals in cases where we need to do something that hasn't happened yet and isn't likely to happen on its own. The difference between the two definitions of goals highlights an important aspect of goals and the way it is often overlooked. Goals are usually things we want, but have difficulty achieving, even though we know they are achievable. Otherwise, we wouldn't need a goal in the first place. Yes, let's read that again. Goals are usually things we want, but have difficulty achieving, even though we know they are achievable. Otherwise, we wouldn't need a goal in the first place. Yeah, if everything was easy, why would you need to make goals? Right? Oh, just do it. Like then the advice, oh yeah, dude, just get up. Just I know that you're like kind of experiencing executive dysfunction. Just try getting up and doing what you needed to do. Oh, dude, yeah, I forgot that it's so easy. Let me just get up. So this is why we have goals. So ease is not important right now. That sense of struggle is also captured in the term behavior change, which I use interchangeably with goal pursuit here. It's not engaging in behavior per se, but rather new behavior that is hard. To pursue what most people call a goal involves doing something different than what has been done before. So if you are abiding by the status quo, right, you're encouraging people who have some sort of goal to not change because it's hard. You don't understand goals or change. And anyway, so yeah, for example, a primary incentive underlying achievement motivation, i.e. the need for achievement, is to demonstrate one's capability to perform well on new or challenging tasks. Sarah, why are you being so sassy right now? Because when you've just been doing internet stuff for since a long time, since the Vine days, and there's always some contrarian or someone who's highly discouraging, and they're like, they think that I hate when people think they're being subversive, and they're just so on the nose, right? They're always like, oh no, I know that, nothing I will ever do or anything anyone will ever do will change. We are all, it's just like, do you know who really gains from that? Like if we were to do a cost benefit analysis, you versus the system really gains from that. You are doing their bidding for free. You are doing what they conditioned you to do. Work for free, right? Serve only their purposes. Don't change. Remain confined in your role or wherever the hell you are. That's why they always restrict mobility. That's why they strip diversity, equity, inclusion, because they don't want anyone to move. Because if you move in a zero-sum society, that means that jeopardizes their fixed position. The more people that move up, the more they're like, wait, no, stop. So I'm saying New Year's resolutions are saying, fuck you to the man. You know what I mean? Let's keep going. So to understand why new behavior is so hard, it's useful to think of two dimensions that give rise to behaviors. The two dimensions that give rise to behaviors. The first dimension captures the skills, capacities, and knowledge required to engage in the behavior. This includes mapping out the steps to take and having the skill to execute an action, as well as related cognitive processes such as attentional focus, inhibitory control, and working memory capacity. Because it reflects the mean. Okay, let me just restart that sentence. Because it reflects the means used to achieve a goal, I refer to the first dimension as the way, okay? So the way are it's the means, right, used to achieve a goal. Skills, capacities, knowledge required to engage in a behavior. Mapping out the steps, having the skills to execute an action, as well as related cognitive processes, attentional focus, inhibitory control, working memory capacity. I have done something on working memory before. I've also talked about mapping, right? To navigate through life, it's, perception is navigation plus memory, right? And so whose map are we working off of? It is not easy to change if we're working off a socially prescribed map, right? So whenever you look at who's giving you advice, right, look at how they've mapped out their life. Are they like, oh, dude, I get married by the time do I gotta have kids by the time do I gotta finish college by the time you know what I mean? If those people are following someone else's map, and they're so confident being like, your resolutions are going to fail, it's because they have never pursued a new goal or attempted actual change by themselves. I'm so sorry. I really hate it. I really hate. And the thing is, okay. So, yeah. The second dimension captures the desire for and importance of a behavior. This includes wanting to achieve a goal and prioritizing it over other goals, as well as related motivational processes such as volition, intention, and the nature and strength of the drive for achievement. Because it relates to motivation to engage in a behavior, I refer to the second dimension as the will. So, we're going to need to sync up the will and the way. We're going to need body and brain to be on the same understanding. Now, this synchronicity is relative to you. If you, have limited working memory or inhibitory control, like I'm saying, don't go off of someone else's standards of like the will and the way. This is what a lot of times I have answered the question, how do you start researching as a hobby? Or like, where do I get my sources? Or like a million times, right? I love answering questions for people who are new or genuinely want to be clued in. However, I'm always like, sources are linked in the bio. And then I'm like, all the books I read this year are on Substack. All the research that I liked this year is on Substack. Like the sources are always linked. And someone will be like, well, and they keep asking the same question over and over again, how do I start reading and learning like you? And I answer that. And I'm like, okay, well, these are the resources and here's like the reference, the frame of mind I was in when I started reading and here's my motivations. And I answer the question over and over again. And then I'm realizing they're asking not genuinely. They're trying to figure out how a woman who they don't respect learned smart shit all on her own. They can't fathom that. The thing is I've answered some people's questions a million times over, and it's the same question every time. And I think I've been pretty concise, and then I'm having these neurodivergent like visions where I'm like, oh, they're asking how someone like me can start reading and learning. And because they see me and they're like, there's no way that someone like you is smart. And it's kind of like going up to someone who's jacked in the gym. Actually, no. The thing is since we're all visual creatures, apparently, socialized by patriarchy, and objective proof is what can be seen, right? You don't see me and think, oh, that person is smart as hell. And if you do, you're incredibly open-minded and very progressive. However, historically, no one ever who's never met me in my life in the past 3 years on their own volition has treated me with any sort of like basic respect. I think it's my vibe. And so like you're like looking at me and you're like, Sarah, how do I, start to read like you? Well, if I was jacked, if reading could get me jacked, I need you to understand that you would go up to someone who's like really jacked and be like, I'll never be like you. Just work for it, right? You can work for anything. Progress, time, I don't know. Hopefully I had like a whole like session with my therapist about this the other day. It's like a lot of people online, actually, this is related. Some people really don't want you to change. I'll get to that. But the thing is I know that like a lot of times when someone starts to gain like a following online, that the first people to usually fall off are your friends. Yes, that's going to happen 100% of the time. It's like, oh my gosh, I'll see like a content creator on the rise. I've seen this for the past 12 years. And a content creator on the rise always makes this video. You ever notice that the first people to fall off first people to fall off are your friends. Most people don't want you to change. Oh, but I started to, that's cool. You're an outlier. I'm saying I have observed this with my eyes. However, the thing is there's a part 2 to this. when you're a content creator for a long time and you make a pivot, right? A lot of people online have thought of you as their friend, right? Even if we're not friends in real life. The amount of resistance I have gotten from pivoting to education, from comedy, right? From getting sober to, I was going to say learning how to read, to like actually reading, it pisses people off because they, thought of us as friends. And they now they're like, oh crap, well now Sarah's improving. You guys, and you're like, Sarah, this seems, if you could read the messages people send me, oh, you've changed. I've changed for the better. The last time, I've changed. Yeah, I got sober and I just started reading books. I still have a sense of humor. Like, it's like, I have not changed for the worse. So you're commenting I've changed for the better, right? Because the only other option is I've gotten worse. And objectively, by all measures, I have not gotten worse. So you're just mad I got better. Anywho. Oh, sorry, this is New Year's resolutions. First thing that will always go. Are your friends or people that perceive you to be friends? This is true for sobriety. This is true for getting fit. This is true for going back to school. This is true for getting a good job. This is true for getting a job. This is true for moving anywhere. This is true for getting, I am saying, if you think you're the exception to the rule, you are not. Okay. I'm trying to be encouraging. The next one will be encouraging. This one anyway. As shown in figure 1, the 2 dimensions give rise to our 4 broad types of action. There's complex routine behavior. You know what? I'm going to cut this off now. So basically, there's complex but routine tasks, which are high skill, low motivation. There's simple and routine tasks, low skill, low motivation, complex and novel tasks, high skill, high motivation, and then simple but novel tasks, low skill, high motivation. A simple but novel task, low skill, high motivation, is changing a diaper for the first time. It doesn't take a lot of skill to change a diaper, but a poopy diaper, you really have to hype yourself up for that. Especially for the first time. I've heard things. I've heard things. So we're going to get back to my outline because I've read enough. So what you need to do is identify, the will and the way of your goals, okay? So the way is executive functioning and cognitive control. So we got brain implicated here. And the will is motivation, reward, and subjective values. Sarah, that's still the brain being implicated. I know, but it's more emotional stuff. There's more emotional fluctuations. And then the way is, so these are, so the will, inputs and outputs. The way is the formula, the equation, right? So this is what we're doing. And most of the inputs and outputs are going to be taken in through the senses or experienced in the body. So yes. That's how you think about them. Is the will and the way, are the calculations both happening in your head? Yes, but where the inputs are coming from, we have to consider, or what function they're serving. Okay, so you also need to know the difference between liking and wanting when it comes to making a goal. Both are part of the reward system. However, wanting is about motivation, the will. Liking is predominantly about pleasure, right? And so the thing is if you're talking about a goal, right, you're like, I want to learn ASL. I'd like to learn ASL is a little bit less, right? And we need motivation. And especially if we're pursuing something new that requires skill, you need more incentive. You need more conviction. I'd rephrase it as I want to learn ASL as opposed to I'd like to learn ASL. Now, you don't have to start off strong, and this is not saying that I'd like to learn ASL is less of it. I mean, it's less potent, right? It's like I want is like taking a shot. I will is like just kind of smelling the hand sanitizer at the gym. Both are confronting. However, the shot goes down the hatch. Unless you're drinking the hand sanitizer at the gym, and in which case I'm just happy half the battle is showing up. So yes, we're gonna pay attention to phrasing. What's new? Sarah's paying it. Okay, the thing is how you speak to yourself about your goals really does matter. You are a human being. How you speak to yourself does matter. So we need to address this. So the phrasing, I want is a direct statement of desire. I don't want is a direct statement of refusal or lack of desire. So if you're phrasing your goals like this, I want to learn ASL, versus I don't want to just know English by the end of next year. You're saying the emotion communicated there is I want to is a direct conviction. I don't want to just know English by the end of next year is so vague, and it's communicating lack. Your brain is picking up on the lack of conviction. More, you know what I mean? And it's also like it's so unspecific. And with goals, you need specificity. Okay, so the importance of phrasing and saying I want to achieve something as opposed to I don't want to, do this thing by the end of next year. Or you got to be specific. If you think about it as, you land at LAX, right? You just got off a flight, hopped off the plane at LAX with a dream and a cardigan and, 3 fluid ounces of shampoo. You then get in an Uber and you tell your Uber driver, I want to go to the Abbey, right? It's an unusual choice, but hell, it's your choice, right? So you have just now given the Uber driver a direct route to the Abbey of where you want to go, right? If you were to get in an Uber and tell your Uber driver, they ask you where you want to go, and you say, anywhere in LA but the Abbey, right? Or I just don't want to go to West Hollywood. Your Uber driver now has to figure out, right? Make a decision. Take on cognitive labor. And where does this person want to go, right? There is no goal. Really anything is succeeding. However, now if they drive you to downtown, you're like, well, I don't want to be downtown. Well, they're like, well, you told me anywhere but WeHo. So I drove you down, and it's not specific. And so they did what you wanted, but you're not where you actually want to be. So be direct with yourself, because you can confuse yourself. If you're saying, I just don't want to, just speak English by next year, like what type of language, do you want to know a programming language? Do you want to know like a second language? Like what type of, are you learning like sign language? Like, are you like, you could know hieroglyphics, you could know a dead language. You could learn, a language, you learn Elvish, right? So like you need to narrow it down, be direct, and show desire, and then ownership, right? I want to what? Yes. So, how does not affect what we understand? Scientists find negation mitigates our interpretation of phrases. So this is from nyu.edu. In the experiments, and they did this experiment, and this is just like a wrap up. In the experiments, participant read on a computer monitor adjective phrases with and without negation. Example, really not good and really, really good, and rated their meaning on a scale from 1, really, really bad, to 10, really, really good, using a mouse cursor. This scale was designed in part to determine if participants interpreted phrases with negation as the opposite of those without negation. In other words, did they interpret really not good as bad, or instead as something more measured? Here, the researchers found that participants took longer to interpret phrases with negation than they did phrases without negation. So not, never, don't, okay? Indicating, not surprisingly, given that the greater complexity, that negation slows down our processing of meaning, right? So if you keep telling yourself, I don't want to do that, I'm not going to do that, I don't want to aim for that area, right? You're actually slowing down your processing. So you're actually increasing effort, okay? In addition, drawing from how the participants moved their cursors, negated phrases were first interpreted as affirmative, i.e., not hot was initially interpreted as closer to hot than cold. So affirmative means it's true, it's real, okay? But later shifted to a mitigated meaning, suggesting that, for instance, not hot is not interpreted as either hot or cold, but rather as something between hot and cold, okay? The scientists also used MEG to measure the magnetic fields generated by the electrical activity of participants' brains while they were performing these phrase interpretation tasks. As with the behavioral experiments, neural representations of polar adjectives such as cold and hot were made more similar by negation, okay? Suggesting that the meaning of not hot is interpreted as less hot and the meaning of not cold as less cold. becoming less distinguishable. In some, neural data matched what was observed for the mouse movements in the behavioral experiments. Negation does not invert the meaning of hot to cold, but rather weakens or mitigates its representation along the semantic continuum between hot and cold, right? Most New Year's resolutions want an inversion, not a mitigation, right? Or some... And so an invert means to reverse something completely, or often turning a weakness into a strength. Weakening means to reduce the strength or effectiveness of something. So if you were to say, this is a really sad example, but if your New Year's resolution for some reason is I do not want to be ugly anymore, right? If we were to apply what we just read to the phrase, my New Year's resolution is I don't want to be ugly anymore. So what's communicated to your brain? A lack of desire, right? I do not want. That's lack of desire. And you're like, but I'm saying I don't want to be. Your brain is picking up on lack of desire. I first, okay? There's less fuel, right, to fuel your process. It also affirms, then mitigates that you are ugly in some capacity. I don't want to be ugly anymore. Affirmative. You are ugly. And now we're going to lessen your ugly. You're still going to be ugly if you're less ugly, okay? So you're validating, confirming the reality, and identifying with being ugly. I am ugly, right? And I want to be less ugly. Saying I want to be less ugly is not implying, again, that you're going to be beautiful. It's saying you're going to be ugly to a less degree, right? And now you're still identifying with ugly. So positive... I want to be more aesthetically in line with my desired aesthetic. I want to be the aesthetic I'd like to be, right? I wouldn't aim for beautiful because you'd have to actually come up with a standard unit of measure. And if you're using beautiful and you're using society's unit of measure for beautiful, that's going to be incredibly unrealistic. And we do need to be realistic when it comes to goals. And I'm not saying that everyone being beautiful is unrealistic. I'm saying if you do not have a solid standard for what you consider beautiful, we will talk about standards later, then you're going to be abiding by someone else's standard, and it's highly subjective. And if everyone's definition of beautiful changes, there is no quality control, and you are now subject to the opinions of everyone else. So you're not truly in control, and inhibitory control is needed here. And if you do not control if you are beautiful or not, right, everyone else is kind of the final determiner of that, then what are we even doing a New Year's resolution for? Okay. So we can also see that it's just cruel. I don't want to be ugly anymore. We can see how it's painful by just adding you. If someone were to say, I don't want you to be ugly anymore, it's just painful, right? It's painful. You're identifying with a lack of desire. You're admitting that you're ugly, right? You're identifying directly with ugly, and you're not going to become more beautiful. You're just going to be less ugly relative to you. And it's not helpful. Again, you want to go to the Abbey, and now you've ended up at a library in Pasadena. And while that's actually, you know what? The library in Pasadena is a lot better than the Abbey. So you wanted to go to a library in Pasadena, and you ended up at the Abbey in WeHo. Your phone is going to get stolen. It's going to get ugly. Okay, so yeah. Put your goals in positive terms. We need to identify with a positive motivation. We also need the desire. I want to learn ASL, right? And learn gives some flexibility, because if you were to say, I want to be proficient or fluent in ASL, then you're like, oh crap, that is a final sort of thing. I mean, if you like to apply pressure and you're someone who really loves a challenge, then go ahead, add that. However, most of us are just trying to ease into New Year's resolutions. So another part to this, your brain has an affinity for syntax. So syntax is the set of rules governing word order and arrangement in language, creating meaningful sentences, phrases, and clauses differing across languages and styles. So if English is not your first language, I would also like you, this rule still applies. Your brain has an affinity for syntax. So whatever the syntax is for the language that you're making resolutions in, we all need to brush up on syntax, okay? So syntax is proper symbol sequencing, okay? Structure conveys meaning. Syntax is the how words fit together. It's the method. If you hear how, think method. It's crucial for clarity, tone, and comprehension. So you want your goals to be clear. You want them to be direct. You want them to be understood by you, okay? So your brain is sticking to syntax, structure of how words flow. Also, a fun etymology lesson. Syntax is from the Greek to arrange together or coordination. So yeah, when you coordinate, we'd say it's the integrity of your sentences. And the thing is how you speak to yourself really does matter. You're like, oh, but I'm just repeating horrific phrases to myself in my head every single day. How could that be affecting my self-esteem? Well, you are a human being, and you are repeating, you're repeating something horribly damaging. Your feelings are real, and that hurts. I think people really deny themselves their humanity when they're like, oh, words don't affect me. Are you sure about that? Are you sure? Okay. So when it comes to coordination, and you're like, but that was the etymology term. It still applies. We're talking about, so proprioception is the sense that manages coordination. It's body position combined with the vestibular system, balance, motion from the inner ear, and vision, which are all integrated by the cerebellum and somatosensory cortex to create smooth, purposeful movement, right? So proprioception, body position, how you position yourself combined with the vestibular system, balance and motion from the inner ear. Also, the thing is talking about how you speak to yourself. You can throw yourself off balance. You have your vagus nerve that goes from inner ear to your heart, right? If your thoughts are racing, check your heart rate. We got a connection, a direct connection right there. And vision. They're all integrated by the cerebellum, and cerebellum is motor movements, right? It's more unconscious, but it can be, yeah. And then somatosensory cortex to create smooth, purposeful movement. We're trying to transition to new behaviors and new ways of thinking and moving throughout the world. This is, if you make it a coordinated effort between brain and body, the will and the way, right? And, you put it into positive terms, give yourself a direct path. You give yourself a direct path and also the ability to smoothly walk that path. You're making it a lot easier as opposed to indirect, where you're like, take me anywhere but the Abbey. Okay, we're going anywhere. And then your thoughts and your will and your way are not coordinated. Now you're going anywhere, and it's kind of like walking drunk across the city. At some point, you may be sprinting. Sometimes you're taking, an Uber. Sometimes you're crawling. It's like, okay, this is going to be the most strenuous New Year's resolution of your life. Direct, right? Coordinated movements. Okay. And so with proprioception, there's a complex interplay where sensory feedback, proprioception, vision, inner ear, informs the brain, the cerebellum, and the parietal cortex to adjust motor commands in real time, right? In the present. Being present with yourself on this path that is the most direct route, the most direct desired path, right? With smooth movements. That is what you're communicating to yourself. Is that what language really communicates? Yes. And the thing is I know that there's a bunch of neurodivergent people listening, and they're like, yes, 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 exactly. No one gets this granular because they're like, oh, it's obvious, right? This is the thing. We're like neurotypical culture. They're like, they're always like, everything is so obvious. It's not. I ask you this. Has anyone heard the term proprioception before 2020? If you did not go to med school, did you know that? Did you? Yeah. So it's not obvious. So circling back to syntax, there are some key things so what I'm trying to say is brush up on syntax. You're like, are you being serious? I am. And I know that anyone with creative writing, literature background, English background, they're like, yes, People are finally brushing up on syntax. Yes, brush up on syntax because how you speak to yourself really does matter. Oh my God. So, for English, there's subject, verb, object, standard English order, like she jogged. There's also adjective placement. Adjective usually precedes noun. These are just basic rules of syntax. Does it matter? Yes, it does. So there's inversion with syntax. This is literary and poetic. It's changing order for effect, like plots have I laid instead of I have laid plots. Now, when it comes to syntax and inversion for a poetic intention, right? I love that you're writing poetry. However, when it comes to goals, right? Poetry is emotions distilled, right? And so like if you want to mix up, confuse some emotions, right? Really make the desire a bit more confusing and harder to understand. Write your goals in poems. It's going to be hard. It's unconventional. I would not advise it unless you're already well versed in poetry or you really, really love a good cognitive emotional challenge. I love poems, however, so I'm saying anyway. So why this matters, correct syntax, that is for goal achievement. 1, clarity. Correct syntax makes message easy to understand. 2, meaning. Changing word order changes the message. 3, tone. Simple versus complex syntax creates formal or informal tones. And then creativity. Writers manipulate syntax for rhythm, stress, and artistic effect. Why correct syntax is great for goal achievement. Creativity. Writers manipulate syntax for rhythm, stress, and artistic effect. Now, normally, that is fine. However, rhythm, stress, fine-tuning. Rhythm describes movement. Additional stress inhibits movements. Normally, this would be fine. However, when it comes to goal and changing behaviors, inhibiting and limiting movement is not going to work as you're likely trying to overhaul something in some capacity, right? So if you are, if you start to manipulate syntax, right, or disregard it, you're adding rhythm, additional movement, but also stress, right? And so now that's going to inhibit movement. And then artistic effect, which is fine-tuning. You should not be fine-tuning shit at the beginning of a dynamic process, okay? Normally, manipulating syntax is great for creativity. However, if we're working on foundational stuff, we do not want to inhibit movement or fine-tune movement. So you're restricting yourself and then you're not letting yourself, and then you're fine-tuning your restrictions, okay? Creativity is trying to convey usually a very particular message. Comfort the disturbed, disturb the comfortable. However, we're trying to get you comfortable from disturbed. So like we're just actually trying to get you comfortable in pursuing change. And we got to undo some stuff. So I would try to not get, it's gonna sound weird. Like don't get super creative with your phrasing. And also you're like, Sarah, this is so granular. I'm autistic. Okay. There's some research. Acute stress impairs inhibitory control based on individual differences in parasympathetic nervous system activity. So acute stress, sudden stress, impairs inhibitory control. So you need control. You need the will and the way based on individual differences. And you can read that. However, this episode, I will be going to a part 2. I am just going to wrap this up with reading from some of this, and then we're going to move on to part 2. Okay. So this is from PubMed, and again, I'm going to read it. So the abstract, identifying environmental influences on inhibitory control may help promote positive behavioral and social adjustments. Although chronic stress is known to predict lower inhibitory control, the immediate effects of acute stress are unknown. The parasympathetic nervous system may be a mechanism of the stress inhibitory control link, given its psychophysiology, regulatory role, and connections to prefrontal brain regions critical to IC. So when it comes to the parasympathetic nervous system, we got rest and digest. Okay, so acute stress impairs inhibitory control based on individual differences in parasympathetic nervous system activity. So when it comes to your goals, Make sure you're well rested and tackle digestion. Because the thing is if you're hungry or if your tummy is upset, right, and you're like, well, Sarah, I got IBS, and I feel for you. Basically, we wanted to tackle some rest and digestion issues. If we'd like to increase inhibitory control, you increase inhibitory control, and then pursuing other goals gets easier. So we're going goal by goal by goal. But that is some additional research. Let me actually. Yeah, so inhibitory control, the ability to stop a prepotent response, allows individuals to flexibly meet environmental demands instead of relying on impulsive response tendencies. Identifying environmental influences on inhibitory control is important because impairment is implicated in negative outcomes such as substance use and psychopathology. Substance use? Anyway, so why this is important is because parasympathetic is your rest and digest system, and a lot of the New Year's resolutions are about eating healthier. Eating healthier. You must actually be eating healthier and eating. If you're withholding food, you're going to have less control, right? And trying to achieve any goal. So please, if you're eating healthier, I'm going to include a book below. It's called The Science of Nutrition. However, I have discussed this in the past. I don't know what everyone's dietary restrictions are, and I don't feel comfortable advising on diet. I'm going to recommend a book on the science of nutrition. Look into it and make sure you're actually eating. And I understand that there are some, financial constraints, especially when it comes to inaccessibility to certain foods. So there are obviously like workarounds that you can do, and my apologies for the godforsaken economy and the fact that the thing is this is what the 1% does, right? They try to starve the population because they know that they lack control when they're hungry. And when you're hungry and you lack control, you want to numb. And then coming from an alcoholic, it's the perfect setup to get you, to numb with a substance. And then they're like, oh gosh, here comes the, prison system. And so if they can get more people unhoused and they can criminalize being unhoused, and then they get a whole bunch of people in jail for the system they set up, they now get a free labor force that they can torture and not pay. So take nutrition seriously. And we are going to pause right here. And this has been part 1 of setting up your New Year's resolutions. Now, the thing is you're like, Sarah, this episode is coming out before New Year's, and then the other episode is coming out after New Year's. Yes, and that's also a good thing because I'm going to be discussing, how to approach New Year's a bit slower. A lot of people, when they approach their New Year's resolutions, they're like, oh, I'm going to run at it a million miles per hour. And so hopefully any runner listening to this will be like, well, actually it's an amateur, actually runners and singers, actually anyone who has done any sort of performance-based sport or activity. Amateurs and people who are bound to fail always put in most of their effort at the first part of the race, right? So, and it's not, everyone's always an amateur at something. However, if you're like, we get to the next episode and you're like, well, I already failed my New Year's resolution. You're not supposed to put 110% in at the beginning of the race. This is where you kind of like ease into it, and we're going to get more playful, and I'm going to give advice on how to be more playful and be more forgiving, compassionate. We are going to talk about reparenting ourselves because I'm just going to tack on an additional goal for everyone in the new year. A lot of people that listen to just any sort of advice, or like with New Year's especially, there's this, almost punitive, carceral, like perfectionist sort of mindset. And they're like, well, I fucked up on day 3 and now I'm unworthy and I have to restart. Think about it like this. If you accidentally exit out of a Word document while you're typing and you're like, oh my God, I've got to restart my computer. No, let's pull up the page again and pick up where you left off. If you are like, every time I accidentally flub, right, I exit out of something, I got to restart my computer. Of course, that's going to be frustrating. Don't restart every single time especially in the beginning. The beginning of the race, the beginning of anything is where you're supposed to make some oopsies. And it's good for learning. But thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you have a merry We're gonna keep it pagan. Merry holidays. I hope you guys get gifts, and I hope you get. I hope it's fun. Whatever your definition of fun is. Fun, I'm gonna just actually there is a scientific definition of fun. It does involve others, but if there are no others involved, that got so dark. Don't worry, I've spent a lot of Christmases alone. It's all gets better. No. I'm wishing you like happy holidays, merry, what's that thing? But thank you guys. This has been Shower Thoughts. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Rate me 5 stars on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any place you get your podcasts. Don't be mean to yourself. It doesn't work. I swear to God, if it never works. You're not the exception to the rule. Being mean to yourself will not be different this time around. It will not. But I will talk to you guys next week. Goodbye.